Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Seven Hidden Keys to Sponsorship Success, a webinar by Charge, a sponsorship consulting company. And on behalf of our entire team at Charge, I want to welcome you this afternoon or this morning, depending on your time zone. But we're going to have a lot of fun this afternoon. We're going to answer a lot of questions, and we're going to put you on the path to sponsorship success. So while we're waiting for people to join the webinar, I just wanted to take care of a little bit of housekeeping. So today I'm going to share with you the 7 hidden keys to sponsorship success. After the webinar, I'm going to send you an email link with a video replay of this workshop that we'll host on YouTube, as well as a link to the free sponsorship deck online course, which we offered as a bonus for you attending today's webinar. And then if you stay till the end of the webinar, we're going to host a Q&A. Frankly, we're going to stay on the webinar as long as we possibly can so we can answer every question that you have. Because again, we want to put you on the path to sponsorship success. So joining me today are two members of our Charge team, Eric Beadle and Efren Amaskita. Hi, guys. How you doing?
Hey, Ken.
Good. How are you doing?
Good. Why don't you introduce yourself to the gang here on the webinar?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start. Like Ken said, my name's Eric. I'm one of the coaches with Charge. I have been in the sponsorship space for about 10 years. I've been working on the side negotiating with brands. I've also been working on the side with properties such as teams and different leagues. But sponsorship has been a space that I have absolutely fell in love with. I believe in the power of it and what it can do for you. And I look forward to answering your questions at the end of this webinar. And I hope you guys have fun listening in on what we get to go through. I do want to mention that when the webinar does officially kick off, I will disappear and I will reappear at the end. So I will be a silent participator for most, but I will be back on to answer your questions.
Thank you, Eric. Efren.
Hi, everyone. Just like Eric, wanted to say that same here. I will be disappearing until the end after this, but just wanted to welcome everybody. I will be monitoring the chat and the Q&A functions throughout. So if you guys have any questions or any comments, please feel free to use both of those. If there's anything that I can answer throughout, I will answer them. And then any other questions that we want to hold till the end, I'll have those for the Q&A portion at the end. So again, welcome and enjoy. With
Thanks,
that
Efren.
being said, we can pass it back to Ken, and Eric and I will disappear for a bit.
See you all in a bit.
I
Bye.
appreciate that. So Efren, Eric, and I were the core coaches for the Sponsorship Success Method. And so we're going to share with you all those things today that we do share as part of the Sponsorship Success Method. But first, I want to ask a question. The chat is open. I was going through all the email addresses of people who register for this webinar, and I noticed an incredible diversity of organizations that are involved. And so I just want to know, I think it'd be interesting for all of us to see if you can throw in the chat, what type of organization do you represent? What markets do you represent? I saw nonprofits, government organizations, sports teams. It was really quite exciting. So just go ahead and throw in the chat where you're coming from. See, Outdoor Industry Expo, Boys and Girls Club, Live Dance Theater, Parks and Rec, Cricket Youth Academy, Motorcycle Racing Team, Women in Chemicals Global. This is fantastic. I think what we're going to find through this is sponsorship is a huge industry. In the US alone, every year there are about $22 billion in sponsorship deals. We estimate that represents about 400,000 transactions. That's sports sponsorship, nonprofit corporate sponsorship, arts and entertainment, municipal, state, non-governmental organization sponsorships, it really runs the gamut. Our goal in this webinar and through the sponsorship success method is that you get your share of that $22 billion market. And frankly, the only thing that's standing between you and one of those deals or one or more of those deals is knowledge and confidence. And we're going to talk about that. But first, I want to just introduce myself. Eric and Ephraim did a great job of introducing themselves. My name is Ken Unger. I'm an author and a sponsorship expert. I have been involved in the sponsorship industry since 1997, but I founded Charge, a sponsorship consulting company, in 2006. We work with a whole variety of different organizations, sports teams, nonprofits, arts and entertainment, and individuals. And you'll find throughout this webinar that I love to speak about sponsorship. I do it all the time. Occasionally, I get called by reporters who are writing stories about sponsorship. I will literally speak to anyone about sponsorship. I love it so much. And that's why I'm excited to talk with you all today about sponsorship. So for me, the journey in sponsorship started about 28 years ago, as I mentioned. And I started in the world of sports marketing. So I come to sponsorship through the world of sports. And it was a long time ago, as you see from the photos on the left, had a lot less gray hair, that I started in the world of IndyCar racing. So I was an auto racing executive. And part of what I was responsible for in my role as a sports marketer was sponsorship. There was only one problem, is I knew absolutely nothing about sponsorship. So, as you could expect, I literally made every sponsorship mistake you could make. Every one. It was painful. It was a dumpster fire. And frankly, at the time, it was incredibly painful. The upside of it, and I can look at it as an upside all these years later, is I'll be talking about the mistakes that I made and what I did to correct them in this webinar today, as well as through our sponsorship success method. But what I was fortunate at the time was I had some really great mentors and teachers and coaches, and I learned from every one of them, and I was committed not to make the same mistakes twice. And so as a result of, again, having great teachers and having great coaches, I was able to close deals in excess of $50 million during my career. About 2 years ago, I took all those mistakes, pulled them all together, and created what we call the sponsorship success method, which is a way for us to share our knowledge about sponsorship with people who are either new to sponsorship or who are struggling with sponsorship. Now, how do I know the things that I'm going to share with you are going to work for you? Well, others have blazed the trail before you. So, for example, Dave, who I'm going to talk about later in this webinar, has learned what I'm going to teach you today. And Dave said that you're going to learn a lot of information that will be valuable for you. And what I love about sponsorship is once you learn these lessons, these are the lessons that'll last you a lifetime, as Dave mentioned. And then there's also Bet. Bet was also new to sponsorship when we found her, when she came to us, and she was entirely uncertain about sponsorship. She's an arts workshop promoter. She has online arts workshops. And she really felt that arts events were not sponsorable at all. And even when she did ask for sponsorship, she didn't know what to ask for. And prior to coming to the sponsorship success method, Bet's biggest sponsorship was $250. But through the things that I'm going to teach you in this webinar, she then knew how to demonstrate her value when she spoke to prospects. She was confident about the value that she gave for sponsorship. And she was able to take that knowledge, again, the knowledge and confidence to find sponsorship, and to date has closed over $8,000 in deals. So what will you hear today? Well, first, in this webinar, I'm going to give you the real facts. What we do is we teach what I call street sponsorship, and that is this is not a college course. We are not teaching sponsorship theory. These are things that work day to day. These are things that Eric and Ephraim and I, when we have been out selling sponsorship, that we use every day with real sponsorship prospects and close real sponsorship deals. We're going to give you the best ideas that work, things that you can implement either for free or very easily with the resources that you have, because we really want you to get going quickly and sell sponsorship. And then we're going to give you tips about how to attract sponsors to your program. So we talked about the 7 hidden keys to sponsorship success. Well, these are the 7 hidden keys. We're going to talk about understanding your audience. I'm going to describe what an audience is, why it's important, and why you need to keep it in mind when you're trying to find sponsors. Where to find the right prospects, how to talk about a compelling value proposition, how to demonstrate to your sponsors or your prospects that you're a great value. We're going to talk about how to build confidence in conversations so that when you have those conversations, sponsors believe in you and they want to have a partnership with you. We're going to talk about knowing your worth so you know what to ask for. You don't ask for too little, but you don't ask for too much that you scare away prospective sponsors. We're going to talk about the importance of customizing your sponsorship deck. And we're going to talk about how you fulfill the sponsorship promises that you make to sponsors and why it's so important in the sponsorship process. But first, I want to know these 7 hidden keys, we think, are the things that get you on track quickly to selling sponsorship. But what I want to know in the chat is, what are the things that you're struggling with? Something inspired you to hit the registration key when you saw our ad or when you saw our email about this webinar, and probably one or more things has been a struggle for you in sponsorship. What is that? I want to see it in the chat, because we want to be sure by the time we hit the end of this webinar that we've talked about it. Donor ghosting, finding the right prospect. I think finding the right prospect, where to find prospects is one of the most frequent questions that I get. Audience research. You know, it is confusing not only how to describe an audience, but where do you find the data for it, and what data is relevant and what data is not. Pricing, following through, tracking ROI. The most effective outreach. Making cold contact. My least favorite part of the sponsorship process, but the most important. Getting an initial meeting. Lots of great things. Ephraim, Eric, and I are going to watch that chat, so we're going to make sure that we're going to hit those topics before we conclude this webinar. So let's blast in there. Keep those ideas coming. Keep the chat open. All right, before we dive in, there is one piece of jargon that I want to get out of the way, because I'm going to use this one a lot. So I'm going to talk about a sponsorship deck. And for those of you who are new to sponsorship, I want to describe what a sponsorship deck is. The sponsorship deck, sometimes called a sponsorship pitch deck, sponsorship letter, sponsorship email. Essentially what it is, it's the presentation which embodies your offer, right? I want you, the sponsor, to sponsor me. And if you sponsor me, here are the terms of it. Here are the benefits you're going to get. Here's who I am and what I stand for. Here's the opportunity. It's usually a document, but we call it the sponsorship deck. It is the most important tool you have, because what it is, it's when you find a sponsorship prospect and you reach out to them with a sponsorship opportunity, this is your introduction. What you're trying to do is kick the door open to a conversation. So you're describing your opportunity, because the goal is to have a discussion just like this, back and forth, to talk about the sponsorship opportunity. If you've got a great sponsorship deck, you'll entice that sponsorship prospect to have a conversation. If your deck is not good, That's when you have ghosting. You'll hear nothing but crickets because your sponsorship deck didn't present a compelling value proposition to justify having a 10-minute, 30-minute conversation about your sponsorship opportunity. So much of what we're going to talk about in this webinar is embodied in that sponsorship deck. So let's talk about the first hidden key of sponsorship success, and that's understanding your audience. So first, again, I want to get rid of the jargon. I want to get you going fast to sell sponsorship the way we do with the sponsorship success method. So let's define what an audience is. Your audience, like most of you, all of you in this webinar or who are in this webinar today, you have an audience, right? It's who you serve or who you speak to. If you're an association, you have members. If you're a government, you have constituents. If you are a sports team, you have fans. If you're a YouTube channel, you have viewers. If you're a nonprofit, you have donors. If you are a social media platform, you have followers. If you're an event, you have attendees. And if you're simply an email list or a Substack, if you're a Substack article, you have subscribers. So all of these constitute your audience. Now, if you have many of these on this list, they're also your audience. It isn't one thing. It's cumulatively, who do you serve? Who do you speak to? That's what we call the audience. Now, why is that important? Because the essence of the sponsorship relationship is a sponsor will sponsor you because they want to make your audience, your members, your followers, your attendees, their customers. The sponsor wants to make your audience their customers. This is a key concept of sponsorship and one you have to really nail, and which is why this is the first hidden key because it's the most important. And I often say the three most important things in sponsorship are audience, audience, and audience. Now, like speaking a language, if you speak French or you speak Spanish or you speak Japanese, languages have their own grammar, their own terminology, their own jargon, and so does audience. And sponsors speak that jargon. And so as sponsorship sellers, we have to understand the basics of how you describe an audience in the jargon that businesses and sponsors use. So audience, the way to describe an audience has two different characteristics: demographics and psychographics. Demographics are things that don't change, like the age of your audience, their gender, their marital status, where they live, their household income. It also has what's called psychographics, which includes things like what are their hobbies, what's your audience's values and attitudes. All of this together is an audience description. Now, the first hidden key to sponsorship success is let's label your audience descriptions to make it simple. In your sponsorship deck, you're going to have information about your audience because that prospective sponsor wants to know, again, are their customers in your audience? And that audience description is a cue. So we're going to make that really simple. But let me give you an example. So here's a fictitious event. Our company is Charge, and we're going to promote a Charge Family Festival. And on the left is an audience, a typical audience description. Where do our attendees live? Well, they live in Midwestern states like Illinois and Ohio. 60% of our attendees are female. Generally, the attendees are 27 to 42 years old, et cetera, et cetera. You see the audience description on the left side. And in this deck, I might have our audience be the label of that particular slide in the sponsorship deck. So the Charge Family Festival has a slide called Our Audience, but that's not simple. So if I were to take that audience description and I really wanted to make it easily digestible for a prospective sponsor to connect, to know, oh my gosh, my customers go to that festival, I'm changing the label of that particular audience description. I'm making it really simple for that prospective sponsor to understand, oh, this Charge Family Festival, the key demographic, the key attendees of this particular festival are Midwest millennial moms. You could tell from the description, on the left side that it generally describes that, but I've made it really simple for a prospective sponsor to connect and go, yes, that's my customer. I need to sponsor the Charge Family Festival so I can get in front of my key audience. By the way, throughout this process, please hit the Q&A button and submit any questions that you have. So when we get to the Q&A section, we have all the questions that you might have regarding anything I talk about during this webinar. Hidden key number 2, finding the right prospect. I saw that a lot in the chat, and I really want to get granular with you about finding the right prospect. Again, this is something that I hear about quite often, and I want you to have no shortage of potential sponsors to talk to. So let's talk about that hidden key. So the art of prospecting is understanding what sponsors want to make my audience, their customers. We talked about that, but let's get particular and talk about, okay, that's a fine theory, Ken, but where do I actually find them? So your challenge is to build that prospect list, again, that you have no shortage of it. Well, I want you to look in 3 different areas to find your potential audience or your potential prospects. I want you to look at your audience. I want you to look at your competitors or organizations or such that are similar to you. And I want you to look at the internet. So let's talk about what that means. So I mentioned before an audience description has different components. And you need to understand your audience closely enough that you know what products and services that they buy. You can do that in a couple of different ways. You can ask them through surveys. You see what they buy by just interacting with them at events. Or often when you know the hobbies, for example, of your audience, you know, based on those hobbies, what products or services that they buy. So, for example, if I know that the attendees of my event, that one of the hobbies that they have is camping, I know that they buy camping supplies and they buy hiking shoes and they buy a whole variety of different products surrounding their hobby of camping. Now, I really want you to find that information in a variety of different places. You can survey your audience. You can use Google Analytics if you have a website that has psychographic information about the pastimes and interests of your audience who come to your website, or your social media dashboard with metrics about your social media followers. All of these are places where you can understand what your audience buys, because this is the first place that you're going to build your prospect list, is from your audience. Secondly, you're going to look at your competitors or similar organizations. So if I'm the promoter of a bicycle race, I'm going to look at other bicycle races around the country. I'm going to go to their website because often they're going to promote the fact that they have sponsors for their event. And I'm going to make a note of the types of companies, the types of organizations that sponsor events that are similar to mine or that sponsor my competitors. I'm also going to do internet research. So for the example I gave, if I know that my audience likes camping, I'm going to go to websites that cater to camping, and I'm going to look at who takes out banner ads on those particular web pages, who advertises in magazines about camping. I'm going to do an internet search about companies that talk about camping as part of their marketing strategy. So I'm going to do research via the internet to find breadcrumbs or clues about either the types of companies, categories that we call them, or actual companies that are engaged in selling to that particular audience interest. So the most important thing is, before you reach out to a prospect, you already know who their target is. And that's why we talk about you can't reach out to everyone. Not every company is going to be a prospective sponsor of yours. You need to know ahead of time that the company that you're reaching out to, that your audience contains their customers. So doing that research is so important, because otherwise you're wasting your time and you're wasting the time of the prospect just to be ghosted or to get a quick no. So the third hidden key is you're going to express a really compelling value proposition or why sponsoring you is such a great deal. First, I want to note companies out there that are sponsoring, they are not looking to sponsor for the sake of sponsorship. They have lots of choices. So a typical company may have 50 different choices of how it can market its product or service, but all sponsors are trying to do the same thing. They're trying to solve a business challenge. So your sponsorship is going to address a challenge that a business has. So the art of creating a value proposition, that why am I such a great value, is because you're the answer to the sponsor's problem. You are the link to their challenge because you offer some unique solution. So let's talk about what are the typical challenges that companies have and how, in terms of building your value as a sponsorship offer, you're going to connect those dots. You're going to be the answer to that challenge that a sponsor has, so they sponsor you. So a sponsor might have a challenge with brand awareness. No one's ever heard of them. They're a new product or service. They're new to your region. They just opened an office. It's an established brand, but it just launched a new product that no one's ever heard of. They have what's called a brand awareness problem. So the types of solutions that you might want to do if a sponsor is looking to increase awareness is logo placements, placing their logo on your website, giving them a sign at your event, or giving them a speaking opportunity at your conference. Again, their challenge is brand awareness. If you can help them address that challenge, you're a great value. Some sponsors have brand consideration challenges. What that means is that they have competitors. So they know that customers are either choosing to drink Coke or Pepsi. And if you're working for the Coca-Cola company, you want people to choose Coca-Cola. So there's a brand consideration issue. And so a company with that kind of challenge would like to do things with you like product sampling, because you have an audience and they want to get their product in front of your audience so that when they're choosing between Coke and Pepsi, well, you get the rest. You get how the rest of that goes. They might have a challenge with sales. And if they have a challenge with sales, if your sponsorship helps them generate leads, again, you are the unique solution, your value goes up, you get the sponsorship. So the fourth hidden key, let's talk about building confidence in conversations. So essentially, everything that I'm going to discuss in this webinar, everything that we teach in the sponsorship success method comes down to two things: knowledge and confidence. Knowledge of how sponsorship works, and confidence in the conversation. So let's talk about how to create that confidence in your conversation. Like anything else, practice makes perfect. Again, this was one of the many, 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 many mistakes that I made earlier in my career. I stumbled through typical questions that I would get about sponsorship. Things like, why is your sponsorship this price? Or what's your track record with other sponsors? And there's only one way to become confident in your sponsorship discussions with prospective sponsors, and that's really to practice. Practice truly does make perfect. So what I want to know is, sometimes when you're meeting with a sponsor, you get tongue-tied. And what I want to know is, do I share that same fear of talking to sponsors that I once had with the rest of you? Please put in the chat if talking to sponsors makes you break out in a cold sweat. Is that something that's of concern to you in terms of how to find the right sponsor? Of course. It's more rejection fatigue. I get it. I get it. We have to have thick skins as sponsorship sellers. But here's what I think about as I think about conversations. The sponsorship that I'm representing is not for everyone, right? And the odds are not always stacked in our favor, right? We might have to have dozens of conversations to find one right sponsor. But you're trying to find the right sponsor, and your sponsorship's not right for everyone. So if someone says no, it's just not right for them. It's nothing personal for you. But I do see people share the same concern that I've had. I have one no passion and product enthusiasm. We have someone who this is not an issue for. Okay, but for the rest of us, here goes. What do we do? So sponsors naturally feel at risk working with a new partner. And for the most part, you're going to talk to sponsorship prospects who have never heard of you. You've reached out to them. They saw your sponsorship deck. They were intrigued by it. It merited a conversation, but you're brand new to them. And so sponsors naturally feel risk like, who is this event? Who is this person? Who's this nonprofit? If I pay them a rights fee, if I, get into a relationship with them, will I lose my job? Will I be fired? So there's this natural trepidation on the part of a sponsorship prospect that you have to overcome in the sponsorship conversation. Well, it's your confidence that inspires confidence. So when you're talking about the value of your particular sponsorship opportunity, and when you talk about it smoothly and with confidence, that's going to put the sponsor at ease. That's going to give them a sense that you are a good value. And there really isn't much risk because, wow, I'm talking to this nonprofit. They really know what they're talking about with partnerships. I think this could be a great value. So there are three things that I recommend to build your sense of confidence, especially if you're new to sponsorship. First, I want you to build a frequently asked question list. Those are the questions that you're going to get time after time in every sponsorship conversation. Now, if you're brand new to sponsorship, you won't have that frequently asked question list because you haven't had any conversations yet. Well, the first time you have a conversation, write all those questions down, and then that will become your frequently asked question list to start. But it'll be things like, why is your sponsorship priced this way? And what is your track record? And who are your other sponsors? It's generally all those things, and you're going to practice all the answers to all those questions, so you are smooth as silk when you get to that sponsorship conversation. You're going to practice with a colleague, and the colleague's going to throw a fastball questions at you to try to stump you, and you're going to go back and forth. But I want to mention a third opportunity that really is really growing with increasing frequently I see in the marketplace, and one that's actually a favorite of mine, and that's role play with artificial intelligence, with AI. I don't really care if you use ChatGPT or Perplexity or Claude or Microsoft Copilot or Google Gemini. And I really don't care if you have a pro subscription or a free account. There's a way for you to role play with AI that will give you a leg up when having your first conversation, or frankly, having a conversation with anyone. So feel free to take a screenshot of this particular slide. This is a prompt that we use in the sponsorship success method to teach our members how to role play so they can actually get practice in how to speak to sponsors. So this prompt talks about, so this is what you would type in using your AI. You're asking the AI to role play and act as a potential sponsor. You're filling in the blank of who the actual company is, what industry they're coming from, who you are, what kind of property you are, and what kind of sponsorship opportunity you're looking for. And you're asking the AI to engage in a back and forth conversation with you while role playing. All you have to do is try this once, and it will blow you away. I guarantee it. We do this with our members, and there is little better preparation for an actual conversation than going back and forth. And the AI will grade you about your answers and suggest ways to improve your answer. So confidence does matter. And one of our members, Tyler, has said now he's very confident. And Tyler can go toe to toe with virtually any marketer. Tyler is not a marketer by training. He is new. He was at one time new to sponsorship, but now he has the confidence to really overcome any objection or any rejection to get deals because Tyler has confidence. So key number 5, knowing your sponsorship worth. Pricing is another question that I get frequently. People ask, how on earth do I price this? Some people are really confounded by it, and I don't want you to be. I want you to know what price is right to go into the market. Again, we could do I literally can do an entire day webinar on pricing. We don't have time for that. I want to get you the basics and I want to get you going fast. There are 4 different theories for how to price a sponsorship, looking at comparative value, cost plus, cost of substitution, and valuation. Let me break those down real quickly to give you an idea where to start. I like the first method the best if I'm new to sponsorship. What do my competitors charge? We call these comps. We call these comparable value, a variety of different names, but I'm trying to see what my competitors are asking for in the marketplace. And sometimes if they're not direct competitors, they will actually tell you, or it'll be on their website, or it'll be in their sponsorship deck. But sponsors know what your competitors are charging, so they know what you should be charging. So this is often a really good a way to price your sponsorship, because you're getting a sense of a market, right? There isn't necessarily one right price. It's what a buyer and seller are willing to pay for a sponsorship. Cost plus is, what does it cost me to deliver this sponsorship? And then I'm going to mark it up. For example, if it costs me $1,000 to give a sponsor a sign at an event, I'm going to take that $1,000 sign, multiply it by 3, and I'm going to charge $3,000 for that sponsorship. It's pretty simple, doesn't always work, but it's a good rule of thumb to get you started. Another theory called cost of substitution is, what value does this give to the sponsor if they were to do some other marketing method? So, for example, if to get exposure to your audience, they would have to advertise, what are they being charged for that advertisement? So if they did a television commercial and they paid $8,000 for the same exposure they would get with your sponsorship should probably be priced at $8,000. And then finally, there's the valuation method. And this is what we teach in the sponsorship success method, along with our pricing calculator, which helps you automate this process. You're looking at each component of your sponsorship, the exposure value, the tickets, all those things that you package as part of the sponsorship. You assign a value to it, you add that up, and you have a guidepost of what you should ask for, so you don't ask too little, but you're not asking for too much. Key number 6, customizing your deck. We recommend that every sponsorship deck be customized to every sponsor you send a sponsorship deck to. I'm going to talk about what customization is, but first I want to talk about why. I like to buy shoes online. I go to Zappos. I go to a variety of different sellers of shoes online. I'm size 9.5. If I go to a website looking for shoes and I don't see size 9.5, I only see size 8 and 13, guess what? Not buying shoes at that website. Same thing goes for sponsors and sponsorship decks. They want solutions to their challenges. They don't want a generic deck, one size fits all. They want to know, if I sponsor you, how are you going to solve my specific challenge? So that's the reason we customize. So what does it mean to customize? Everybody's going to have what's called a base deck. You're going to have a deck that you start with, something that is pretty generic. But with each different part of your sponsorship deck, you're going to customize it. You're going to make changes within this document to demonstrate that you are a particular solution. You're going to make the sponsor feel that you went out of their way to speak to just them. because everyone wants to feel like they're a buyer. They don't want to feel like they're sold to. So how do you do that? Well, there's some simple things you could do without going crazy and customizing your deck. First, you can mention your prospect by name, include their logo if you know exactly which logo they use, and reference their particular challenge if you know that from your research. So when getting a sponsorship deck, if this says prepared for XYZ company and I'm with XYZ company, I'm going to take note of that versus just a deck that I know goes to everybody, regardless of who they are and what challenge they have. I'm also going to do that in my audience description. We talked about that earlier. The label of Midwest Millennial Moms that I used earlier. If I know who their customers are, if I know they're looking to hit a Gen Z audience, so men and women between the ages of 18 and 28, for example, I'm going to mention that in my audience description because I want them to zero in. Again, I'm customizing this to them and I'm showing them this is a solution to your problem. I am the solution. You need to sponsor me. The last hidden key, fulfilling your promises. I love this quote by Brian Tracy because I think it applies to sponsorship, even though he meant this in regard to business in general. You keep customers by delivering on your promises, fulfilling your commitments, and continually investing in the quality of your relationships. This absolutely applies to sponsorship. And I often say that the easiest sponsor to find is the one you already have. And you do that by making a promise to them, fulfilling your promise, delivering on what you promise as part of the sponsorship relationship, and tell them that you fulfilled your promise. This last point is really this hidden key. You're telling them that you fulfilled your promise. You're not assuming that they know that you fulfilled your promise. If you had an event and you gave them exposure, you gave them logos on signs or whatever you gave them, you're giving them a report afterwards to demonstrate that you did it. The fulfillment report, sometimes called a proof of performance, is simply a document that lays out what you promised and how you've delivered it. It's not important that you fulfilled your promise. You have to tell them you fulfilled the promise, because very often in sponsored organization in organizations that sponsor, you might be dealing with a sponsorship manager, but they have bosses, right? So their bosses want to know, hey, how did that sponsorship go with that nonprofit? If you create that fulfillment report, your sponsorship manager can send that report to his or her boss and then renew the sponsorship with you. How do you do that? I love photos, screenshots of logos and signage. A picture is worth 1,000 words. So in this document, and it's a fulfillment report, I'm taking pictures and screenshots of everything I gave them to demonstrate that I gave it to them. And then I also love either photos or testimonials of my audience interacting with the sponsor, because nothing makes a sponsor feel better than saying, I love the fact that XYZ sponsored this event. I'm definitely going to buy their product afterwards. All those things demonstrate great value to sponsors, which is why it's so important. You also want to focus on metrics. You want to demonstrate your performance, whether it's engagement from your social media or how many attendees came to your event. You want them to know that there was a return on investment for what they spent on the sponsorship. So the things that I showed you are typical of what we learn and talk about in the sponsorship success method. And I want you to be successful like the sponsorship success members are that we have. So I told you a little bit about BET at the top of this webinar, but I want to take just a minute to tell you a little bit about Dave and Tyler, and I want to show you how they went from struggling to selling in their sponsorship journey with the exact same things that I have told you about in this webinar. So Dave is a pro angler. When Dave came to us, he was overlooked by sponsors. All right, he was struggling to get responses from people. And if any of you know about professional bass fishing, it is filled with what's called endemic sponsors. Those are sponsors that are related to the fishing industry, and they love to give product and they hate to give cash. So he was getting all these offers of products, but what Dave really needed was cash sponsorship because Dave needed to fund his budget to fund his dream of being a pro angler. When he came to the sponsorship success method, he learned how sponsorship really worked. He developed the confidence to go toe to toe with marketers. And since then, he has landed more than $145,000 in deals. Again, one of them was him going toe to toe with a VP of marketing who is now his title sponsor for his fishing program and having a good natured argument about what works for that sponsor. He won that argument, landed that sponsor, and now he's moving up the ladder in pro fishing. Tyler went from rejected to respected. Here's a gentleman who's working in the motorsports industry who was frustrated that his prospects didn't understand sponsorship, and he was struggling to explain that to them. But again, after what he learned in the sponsorship success method, he became confident and strategic in how he talks about sponsorship. He actually teaches sponsorship to other people, and so far he has closed over $50,000 in sponsorship deals. And Tyler is a ninja using our sponsorship pricing calculator, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute. So for those people who have applied what we teach, after 6 months have been 100% successful in finding the sponsors that they deserve. Again, this is not magic. This is what I use to sell $50 million in sponsorship. It is sponsorship 101. It is broken down to bite-sized pieces for you to use and for you to be successful. So how did they do it? So let's talk about the sponsorship success method. It starts with on-demand videos with every aspect of the sponsorship process. 50 videos. I talk about them as being snackable. Each one's less than 10 minutes. You can watch it at night if you have a full-time job or you have demands on you, family, whatever. You can fit it into your schedule whenever you have time. There are 12 different modules covering every aspect of it, including, as you see in the screen cap, how to speak to price, how to build your sponsorship deck, how to find sponsorship prospects. And you not only could do this online on your computer, but we have an app so you can do it on your phone, take it anywhere you are, any time of the day or night. The real magic, though, of the sponsorship success method is group coaching. It is just like this. You will see me and Eric and Ephraim, and we will process your challenges with you every week on our group coaching calls on Zoom. This is truly where the magic happens. It is about getting real-time advice. It's about applying what you learn, because you're not going to learn everything from those videos as good as they are. You're going to learn by getting objections or getting ghosted or getting challenged about how to find the right prospects. And through group coaching, we're going to help you overcome every one of them. We have a private online community. Think of this as a Facebook group for sponsorship. It is always open. You can post questions day or night. Our coaches, we are always monitoring the questions. And the most popular aspect of the community is people are posting their sponsorship decks and we're critiquing it. So you could post as many times as you want and post your sponsorship deck. And we are telling people this works, this does not work, change it, do whatever. But we are ensuring that our members' sponsorship decks and every other question they have is optimized for success. I mentioned the pricing calculator. It's Tyler's favorite, but this is your cutting edge online resource. This is what we've taken is the same valuation method that we use for big time sponsorships. For 7- and 8-figure sponsorships, we've made this available to our sponsorship success method members. It is an online calculator where all you have to do is enter your data and boom, you get a recommendation with the right price for you to ask for your sponsorship. So you need to stop worrying whether you're asking for too much or too little. You have the confidence to know that you're asking for the right amount. And finally, there's templates and guides because we want to get you going fast. It's about email templates, how to write that cold call email, how to do an audience survey if you want to. If someone wants to put you in an affiliate marketing program instead of a sponsorship, how to answer that objection. We have all these templates and guides because, again, we don't want you wasting time. We want you selling sponsorship and finding those right partners. Now, if you pulled all these things together in the marketplace and bought them all separately, it would cost you about almost $28,000 if you were to do that. But the sponsorship success method does not cost that. First year enrollment for the sponsorship success method to have unlimited access to everything we talked about, to have unlimited access to us, is $4,000 for the first year. But we offer everyone in this webinar a $500 discount if you act within the next week to join the sponsorship success method. So your cost for everything we talked about is $3,500. So what price to have the success that Dave had, selling over $145,000 in sponsorship, or Tyler, who sold over $50,000 in sponsorship? This is the beginning of your journey to be as successful as those sponsorship success members are. Now, I went a little long in the presentation, so we're just going to answer questions until really we've run out of questions. But I wanted to leave these particular links up. If you had any more questions about the sponsorship success method, you could schedule a call to talk to us. If you've heard enough and you literally want to get selling sponsorship today, if you want to start finding the sponsors that you deserve today, you can hit the link on the right, and literally you'll be going before the end of the hour. So Eric and I are going to field these questions. So Ephraim, what do you got?
Yeah, let's start going through these. It looks like we have a couple already coming through, but if there's any more, feel free to add them to the Q&A and we'll get to each of them. So let's start it off here. We have someone from a smaller community that has a community event that is looking to seek bigger corporations that might be interested in sponsoring specific areas within the event. So such as a zipline experience, having some sponsors that specific event within the overall event. So do you guys have any recommendations on how they could do that, or if a sponsor would be even interested in doing something like that?
Yeah, so great question. Thank you for that. I think the first thing I note is I don't really care how big a sponsorship event is. It could be a small community event. It could be the Super Bowl. Don't really matter. It's the same principles, and there will be as many sponsors at a small community event as any other event. So the good news is there are plenty of sponsors out there. Now, if you're going for bigger sponsors or for bigger companies, there's a couple of things to keep in mind. First, they just want to confirm that their customers are in your audience. So no matter what size that company is, if they sell in your audience, that's a good first step. However, there's sometimes some logistics challenges we're dealing with bigger companies, because a lot of times when you're dealing with the marketing staff of a bigger company, they're looking at more national or regional sponsorships rather than local sponsorships. So I recommend two things. If you're dealing with a huge company, go to the smallest office you could find, right? Usually either a local office or a regional office that you know is dealing with the specific business concerns of your particular community. So for example, if you're dealing with a national supermarket chain, go to that local marketing office because they're going to be most concerned with your community. The other thing is, it isn't necessarily the greatest thing to have big name sponsors. It's good to have reputable sponsors of any kind. And your community is probably filled with a lot of businesses that would love to do it. Another thing you mentioned about the zip line is you're probably looking for a sponsor that wants to connect with something exciting. So their brand is about excitement, or they want to They want to infuse excitement into their brand by being the official zipline sponsor of your community event. So keep that in mind, because like a very boring or placid sponsor probably may not be interested in the zipline event, but one who's like really interested in energy. So, for example, an energy drink or a coffee shop or things of that nature might be interested in the zip of a zip line. Eric, you have anything to add?
Yeah, so the way that I'll interpret this question is we do have other community members like you that either have events or, properties that have multiple areas within that event. So, if you have a zip line area, a concession area, and you're looking to sponsor each one of those segments within your event, I would absolutely encourage it because I think there's a tangible, visual association with it. There's that connection. So for like going back to what Ken said, the zip line recalling on the event if they had a great experience is we were at the Geico zip line at this following event. So there's that recall and there's that visual association with that name. So as far as sponsoring specific areas, I would highly encourage that, assuming you build out that structure well. I wouldn't necessarily just throw it around just to throw it around, but I do think there's a lot of value just on the connection level and that visual association level.
I I saw in the chat someone asked a question about software we recommend for building sponsorship decks. Uh, I keep it simple. I I it's I don't have anything against a lot of these companies that have automated deck creation, especially some that use AI. But PowerPoint, Canva, and the reason why I like those is it gives me really flexibility to customize because I got to customize all these decks, and the more simple the better. It's also less expensive than some of the others. I know I had a client that I met with yesterday that for their sales team they use Digideck. It's
Hmm.
great. But all those things come with subscriptions, and I just like to keep costs down for our sponsorship sellers because they're trying to get money in, not
Yeah,
necessarily trying to have money out.
I've used DigiDeck. It's a great tool. It can be expensive on depending on what platform you use within it. But no, I would agree. I mean, keep it simple if need be. Real quickly, Emily, I see your question here. Is there a contract? There's no contract involved with our membership. It's a year-long um, membership, if you will, and with a renewal opportunity. So it's a year long, beginning the day that you start. And then after that year, should you want to renew, you have the opportunity to renew at a lesser rate, which is 1,500.
Ephraim, what do we got?
Just kind of touching on that subject as well. I see that Emily put in the chat, if we would be able to go over this information again with her and her boss during a scheduled call. So I want to say yes, that Eric and Ken would definitely run through that again with you guys if you scheduled a call.
100%.
Yep.
We got so many great questions. Ephraim,
Yes. So
what's
oh,
sorry?
sorry, yeah. So how would you recommend that we structure sponsorship offerings for sponsors that look for impact and values over exposure and ROI?
Great question. It is the perennial tug of war with nonprofits and other impact-based organizations. Do I lead with mission or do I lead with promotion? So I want to get to as many questions as possible, so I'll give the quick one-on-one on this. So the answer is both, right? So for nonprofits, the revenue streams are donations, grants, and sponsorship for the most part. Donations are there's no expectation of recognition. Sponsorship is not quite the opposite, but moving in the other direction. There is an expectation of recognition because there's a desire for promotion on the part of the sponsor. So what I recommend is just a balance between the two. They want to sponsor you because of what you stand for, because of your impact, right? That's a key part of your brand is the impact you create in society, whatever nonprofit that is. But you got to balance that out, and you have to offer promotional elements, again, that are consistent with your nonprofit status, right? You can't offer blatant advertising because that's not consistent with your nonprofit status. But you have to offer marketing promotion, or it's not a sponsorship. It's more akin to a donation. So it's that balancing test, but it's both, right? They want to sponsor you because of your impact, but they want to sponsor also because of the promotion they get. What
Eric, did
else?
you have anything to
Next
Yeah,
add?
question.
I'll leave it there. I think it's important to still have a structure in place, like Ken said, but the emphasis ultimately is the mission that they're aligning with and the continuous emphasis on aligning what that is and promoting that through the structured opportunities that you're providing from a sponsorship standpoint.
Awesome. All right, so next we have, do you have a percent recommendation on what an organization should project for during down years? So for example, during COVID, they were down on sponsorship, but up on advertising, but now post-COVID, they are down on advertising, but up on sponsorship. So is there like a set percentage that you would recommend on sponsorship?
Uh, can you repeat that question, Ephraim?
So do you have a recommendation for sponsorship being down, like for a down year? So like how much of a percentage that you
I
can
think,
expect?
yeah, I think the question is, should they anticipate
Correct.
a reduction in sponsorship during economic difficulties? And what is that generally from a percentage standpoint?
Uh, the answer is it's industry dependent.
Yeah.
So the answer, no, the sponsorship industry isn't necessarily down. So during COVID, we saw some sponsors ramping up sponsorship expenditures, and some sponsors who were hit pretty hard during COVID, either leaving the sponsorship market or decreasing their sponsorship spend. So the art of you finding the right sponsorship prospect is to be able to tell the difference between industries. So if we're heading into a recession, as people are starting to think now, question is who will be most impacted? Those companies are likely to pull back on all marketing, and they will definitely pull back on sponsorship. But the art is to find those companies who are not. I tell people in terms of recessions, we have to all be bold as sponsorship seekers, right? Companies are not going to just, curl up in the fetal position and wither away and die. They need to sell things to their customers, and sponsoring you is the way to do that. So it's sharpening your pencil, great value proposition, knowing the right sponsor, right? If you can't go to a sponsor that's getting crushed in the marketplace because they're cutting back, but find the one that's being bold and trying to increase their market share. Um, but yeah, so tough economic times require us to get, really limber and nimble as sellers.
And I would say as a side note to that, regardless of it's economic times or prosperous times, this is where the focus on the renewal retention and the importance of that fulfillment report or that proof of performance, so that you can continuously show your sponsor that you are a very strong outcome for them, that it is worth being invested into your property or your event. So that's where, again, when we talk about the importance of renewals, that proof of performance needs to come into play because that'll help um, that higher percentage stay retained.
We we've hit our hour, but we're going to keep going. We see there's so many people still on the webinar. So, Ephraim, let's keep going. Next question.
So do you guys have any tips for ideas for finding sponsors in a competitive region that doesn't have many sponsorship opportunities?
Eric, you want to take that one?
Yeah, so and repeat it real quickly, Ephraim.
So this organization or team, they are in a competitive region that doesn't have many sponsorship opportunities. Do you have any recommendations on how to get what is available and or be competitive within that space?
Yeah, so it's a great question. It's always going to be difficult if you're in a limited space, a rural space. Um, but I would shift maybe the focus of it from necessarily just, hey, true sponsorship as far as this is the return you're going to get, to this is an investment into our community, and shifting that focus a little bit and still being able to provide a value that way, but you're simply shifting the mindset of this is a community investment. That's how I would frame that if you're in a very competitive rural type of area with limited sponsorship opportunities. If this is an investment, it's going to benefit the community. And I think that'll show the value that you need to provide.
I I just saw in the chat, Patty asked a great question. I just want to note for anyone who's remaining on. Um, Mentioned sharing a deck at the end. What I will be sharing is the opportunity to take our online course on deck creation for free. And it is a little less than a 90-minute video, but it also includes our deck template. So you can get started with our template, um, sample the course on building the deck. So you should be receiving that email tonight with the link for that. Actually, I'll do one better. Um, for those still on the call, you can scan this QR code and you can get started right now if you'd like. But I'm also going to send an email that has this information for everybody.
So there's a question that I want to get to as well, Ken, and I think it's an interesting one. Is um, the premise is I'm a major event and I'm looking for a major sponsor. Is this possible for a first-time sponsorship? And I'm assuming for a first-time event. And it's a question we get a lot. So I want to see what your thoughts were on that, and I'll chime in with my.
I'm sorry, Eric. Can you repeat?
Yeah. So this individual asked the question: I'm interested in a major event or putting on a major event, but I need a major sponsor. Is it possible for a first-time sponsorship?
Yeah, my quick answer is it's really hard, um, because sponsorships are based on the track record of the seller, and obviously, when you have a new event, you don't have a track record. So there's a couple things you could do to find that sponsor for that new event. Is one, you're going to sell your track record as an event promoter, what success you've had in the past. You can also look at competitive sponsorships to be able to price to know what the relative value is. But the reason why major sponsors are reticent to get into first year deals, especially for brand new events, is if they don't have a track record and their promoter doesn't have that, it's all risk, right? Will it actually happen? How many people will come? Will there be other problems associated with it? So you have to overcome it by selling your reputation as part of the sponsorship. And often you're going to probably have some guarantees about attendance or those types of things. Because remember, I mentioned before, sponsors hate risk. So they're going to want to hedge with a new event.
Yeah, and I think to go off of that is, is it possible to answer that question? Yeah, certainly it's possible. But again, similar to me, as a buyer of anything, I look for a track record. I look for, what's the success rate likely for me? Again, it's not to say that if someone's not going to invest in that event, but they may pull back on how much they're willing to invest initially. But this is, again, going back to taking a step further, the importance of you being able to show them that success after year one so that maybe that investment can increase in year two and year three and beyond.
Yeah, absolutely. Ephraim, another question.
Yes, so I think building off of that, someone is asking when is the best time to pursue sponsorship, or when is that sales cycle or sponsorship sales cycle?
Uh, the sales cycle is long, and don't let anyone lie to you about that. It is not 30, 60, 90 days in many cases, unless the sponsors know you, right? You can shorten the sales cycle if like you have dealt with a particular organization frequently or you are just really well known to them. The general sales cycle for sponsorship is 6 to 18 months. And the reason why it's so long is that these are complicated relationships, and people have to request budget, and there's the back and forth of conversation. So it is really important that you have a long lead time. I get this all the time. I get email from people who are, it's May 1st today, and I'll get an email, hey, I'm having a festival around Memorial Day, and I'm starting the sponsorship search, and 30 days is just too short. So give yourself time because we want you to be successful. So give yourself time. And secondly, understand budget cycles, right? So if you're asking a sponsor for money, they've set that in a budget last year. So you want to get ahead of that. You know, larger companies who have a January 1 fiscal are setting their budget starting in August. So that's why the sales season is now for those companies. You want to get in front of them, you want to get in their budget. And so just give yourself time, right? But don't let anyone tell you that, you know, you can get started and bring in a sponsor in 30 days. That's really rare.
And to go off of that, even if you do get that sponsor within 30 days, my concern is always the implementation of that sponsorship. Do you have the bandwidth and the time to actually implement the sponsorship successfully? Again, going off of then the budget planning season, you will likely always get that objection from a potential sponsor that says, "Hey, it's not in the budget for this year." It's a very common objection, but it's also an opportunity for you to ask, when is your budget season? When do you start talking about the next year so that when you get to the budget season, you're part of that conversation? The whole key is to be a part of that conversation for the next season. So that is a question I would always ask as a follow-up to their objection.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind so that you can be a part of their budget planning discussions.
Great point. Ephraim.
I think following up on that, someone asked, what is the best month to reach out for a sponsor for an event the following year? So I think going into that sales cycle, knowing it's going to be, as Ken said, 6 to 18 months, I think if you can expand on that, what you would recommend.
Yeah, I think it's important to consider cycles. We just talked about that, but here's my rule of thumb. The best time to ask for a sponsorship is now. And the reason why I say that is this: you can get all hung up and twisted into a pretzel worrying about fiscal year. Everything that Eric and I told you is true, but I have a client who has a January 1 fiscal. I have a client who has a July 1 fiscal. I have a client who has an April 1 fiscal. So literally 3 different clients, 3 different budget cycles. You know, if you're selling to them, how do you know that? So just engage them now. They'll be pretty transparent about their budget cycle. But again, if you have a longer term focus, you're going to keep them warm over a period of time. So even if you miss the budget this year, that, you know, your objective, you got them on the phone, you got them in a Zoom call, you know, keep them engaged, you know, put them on a tickler system where you're reaching out every few months to, hey, remember me? I'm with XYZ nonprofit. And I don't mean to sound trite about it, but literally now is the best month.
Yeah.
Because again, no time to waste. Get in front of them, find out more when you talk to them about their cycle.
All right. So next we have we have a motorcycle racing team that is looking to seek new sponsors outside of the motorsports industry. They are continuously building their digital assets via their social media, but they have realized that they need more than that. Do you have any recommendations that are ways that they can add value beyond just the logos on their bike and their riding gear?
One, I love motorcycle racing, supercross all day long, motocross all day long. Love it. Second, I love your question because you are spot on, exactly what you should be doing. If you're a motorcycle racing team, you could be looking for what's called endemic sponsors all day long. That's people who are part of the motorcycle industry. Either they make them, they sell parts for them, gear, etc. You're going after non-traditional sponsors. I think that's awesome. And all you got to keep in mind is, what products or services do motorcycle racing fans use? And frankly, they use a lot. And a lot of great services. We know a little about that. We had a client on the factory side who was in the motorcycle racing game. And so what we know about those fans, for example, is they love to camp, they love to fish, outdoor, they love to barbecue. There are all these different psychographic elements, and you mentioned coffee, I think. Fantastic. Go after those sponsors, demonstrate that They're in your audience. They're super loyal. There aren't a lot of sponsors like that. So sponsors want to stand out, right? They want to make a splash. So in this sea of sponsors about motorcycle, your coffee sponsor is going to stand out like a beacon, like a lighthouse, shining brightly over dark seas. And that sponsor is going to get a lot of attention, and they're going to be so happy that they sponsor your race team. So, love the emphasis. But again, it all starts with your audience. So if you know what motorcycle racing fans use, buy, enjoy, that's the keys to the kingdom, right? Those are the breadcrumbs that are going to lead you to that non-endemic sponsor that's going to sponsor your team, and you're going to kick butt because all the other race teams are going after the motorcycle sponsors. Let them do it.
Righty. So next we have a nonprofit that builds large housing complexes. They spend quite a bit on construction costs and trades vendors. But so far they have yet to engage with them. Their current audience is not necessarily their ideal customer. So do you have any recommendations on how they could potentially appeal to them?
So as I'm hearing it, so to me, this sounds like this is an opportunity for a B2B relationship as opposed to trying to thrust who you're building the homes for as part of the sponsorship. So I think for you, you're a customer of theirs at this point in time. There's an opportunity to continue to have them retain your business, and that means there's a sponsorship opportunity. The other side of it too is going back to the mission affiliation with it. If you're building, um, homes for low income or rural areas that help support the community, I would continue to emphasize this as the opportunity for them to be involved in sponsorship, because that's an opportunity for them to put their flag in the ground and say, look at what we're doing in the community to better off, the impact that we're making. So that's how I would approach it. Is this is more of a B2B play and not necessarily a B2C play, in my opinion.
Good. I saw in the chat another question about from Matthew about what cadence or communication style is best for keeping mission-driven sponsors engaged throughout the year without overwhelming them. I think it's first of all, if you're not, don't spam them, right? So you're not going to overwhelm them with communications, but really what you want to do is you want to demonstrate your value prop through those mission-driven emails. So you're giving them a sense of how you promote other corporate partners. You want to give them a sense of the activation activities that those other partners are doing. So, for example, I can recall a client who worked with a partner, and the client and the partner created some incredible, again, mission-driven video that was about the mission, but it was also promotional for the partner. So you can send those to those companies that you want to keep, kind of in a warm email back and forth. So yes, you're talking about your mission, but you're always planting the seed of, oh, these are the opportunities of how they honor their corporate partners, and so you're giving them a sense of FOMO, so to speak, fear of missing out. So you're really giving them over and over and over, and I'd say probably monthly would suffice, but as long as they're high impact, you're like, oh, I want that. Because that's the thing. When a sponsor looks at something and goes, I want that, referencing what you do for somebody else, you've got them hooked. Good question. Thank you. Ephraim, what else you got?
I think we're running a little short here on questions, but we'll finish these up and then close out for the day. But the last one I have, or one of the last ones I have is, do you pull demographics from social media following or potential attendees based on your event location?
So I would 100% pull your information from social media because that is still an audience that you reach. Same with your website. It's still an audience that you're reaching. And it's an easy way to grab some information. So I would always start with that. And then the second part, Ephraim, could you repeat that for me?
So it'd be potential attendees based on your event's location. So if you're going to many racetracks and you're a team, would you use the audience from that general location, I guess, for example, or would you use it from like the series or whatnot? That's just an example that I kind of pulled, but
Yeah. They're both like I agree with Eric. They're both your audience. So you're going to pull both. What you're not going to do is you're not going to mash it up, right? Because sponsors, they, they see this all the time. They want to get a sense of what is what. So you might have a slide that goes your event audience, and then you might have a slide that says your social media audience, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that they're very similar, that they're the same. So you certainly don't want like a super young audience on social and then a super old audience, at events, because you're creating some dissonance. And then the sponsor saying, "Is my customer in that audience?" And you don't want that. But you're trying to pull all the data you have with all the different audiences, label it appropriately, and give that sponsor a really clear sense of who they're talking to.
alrighty. And then it looks like this might be one of the last ones as well. Do you have a recommendation on who to contact within a national company, such as like Marriott or Southwest? And then do you have any tips on how to contact them?
So the best way in the sponsorship success method, we have a whole video on kind of tracking down contact information. Uh, the best way in an organization like that, we love LinkedIn. It's a phenomenal platform. It's grown not only popularity but in accuracy because everybody wants to have their correct title, and even if they don't give their work email, they might give their Gmail email. But there's also a way to track that down. But what you do in LinkedIn is you look for people who have either partnership or sponsorship in their title. That's kind of test number one. Test number two is then if you can't find that, you look for the marketing group because the marketing group is 9 times out of 10 the ones purchasing the sponsorship. And once you find that, you then go as high as you can go. And many of you are familiar with sales who are on this call. It's a expression called going to power. So you look for the CMO, or in smaller organizations, you might go to the CEO. But really, what you're trying to do is sponsorship, partnership, marketing. And then there are various techniques and various services that provide email addresses. But even we find sometimes the guessing method works really well. So, Southwest Airlines, I think it's southwest.com. So in the BCC line, if it was me, Ken Unger, it'd be K Unger at Southwest, Ken Unger at Southwest, Ken Dash Unger at Southwest, and really keep guessing all the protocols. But you can also find the protocols for other Southwest Airlines addresses. So once you have the name, you can find the email, and once you have the email, you can get the contact information. Another way to do that is to go through their DM, right? So there are ways, if you're a LinkedIn premium subscriber, you could send a direct message directly to that person via LinkedIn.
Alrighty, I think that's pretty much it for questions.
I see in the chat, no, not correct, but what I'd be happy to do is reach out to you if there are any questions that were pending or that we couldn't get to. I'll be happy to reach out. But I just wanted to thank everyone for being part of our webinar today, especially for those who stuck around an extra half hour. Um, Secret, I won't tell the people who left after 2:30 Eastern. You're the guys who are going to sell sponsorship. And so, because you're the ones who have a commitment to getting the facts, getting it straight, just like our sponsorship success method members. Um, there's nothing that's going to stop you from being successful. Um, we're we're excited that you joined us for this. Please If you have any other questions, please schedule a call with me or Eric. Uh, and of course, if you think that Sponsorship Success Method is right for you, here's the opportunity for you to enroll now. You're going to hear from us. I'm going to send you information about the sponsorship deck online, the free class. You're going to get our deck template. A replay of this will be posted on YouTube. But on behalf of our entire team at Charge, I just want to thank you for attending our webinar. And no matter what, I wish you guys sponsorship success. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks,
Okay.
Ephraim. Thanks, Eric.